When Di asked me to read a poem here today, she half suggested I do the poem that I wrote for the Ripples' 10th birthday celebration. Seemed a bit of an odd choice to me because it wasn't about loss or grief or indeed Ian. It was about making things, creating things, doing stuff and being part of a community. But when I thought about it, that was Ian, someone who made stuff, created stuff, did stuff, and was very much a part of our community. So what started out as an odd choice ended up being oddly appropriate. So without further ado, by a river. In a shed by a river, in a suburb northeast of town, a group of artists come together and sparks are struck and fly around. Some burn briefly, bright but flawed. Some are saved for another day. Some inspire the eye, the hand toward paper, fabric, stone and clay. And then the making, the contemplating, the marking, the ruminating, the designing, the sketching, the refining, the matching, the scoring, the stitching, the drawing, the tinting, the painting, the printing, the shaping, the dyeing, the turning, the cutting, the tiling, the framing, the sculpting, the firing. Then the viewing and the sighing, with the satisfaction or the disappointment that comes from following the spark. Yet always lessons learned and knowledge earned to be applied next week, next time. 10 years now of next times and counting, happily, creatively counting. Thank you.
To have met my dad and Ian. They would have appeared to be very different people. But as Dad said, never judge a sausage by its skin. They were both born in Adelaide, but by 11 years old, Dad, in the Depression, he was in the mid-north working on farms for keep. His mum was a war widow and she had 2 boys to raise. Ian, however, grew up in a stable family in a stable home, his father having survived World War I. He was educated in good schools and with a loving and extended family around. But my dad was 15 years older than Ian and was in the army during World War II. Ian, just a boy, served in the Navy. He would say, I had an easy war, a hammock and meals every day. Your dad did it hard. My dad, after being in Egypt and Syria, was a spotter in the jungles of New Guinea. But let's face it, there's no easy war. The saying goes that women marry their fathers, meaning, of course, that we women are drawn to the qualities of our fathers. My dad and Ian are majority influences in my life. Some women get double luck. I got it. They were men of integrity and respect for all humankind. They were exceedingly loyal and committed and loving to their wives and their families. They quickly ran to humour, seeing the quasi-important things of life for their absolute silliness, and they called them out. They laughed and they joked so easily. Ian had always said that he'd love to have met my dad. I would have too, but it wasn't to be, of course. They had vast knowledge of practical things with a sharp intelligence and curiosity. They were how does it work and how is it made people. They were generous with that knowledge and ever patiently explaining to others. I loved my dad, of course, but Ian never got to meet him, unfortunately. So when Ian asked me to marry him, us both being single, I was in a dilemma. I was sworn off marriage, once bitten, twice shy. How could I resist these beautiful qualities? And under Ian's care, I flourished. I healed my scars, and we became a team. And while in hospital just recently, he beckoned me near. His voice was very light. Every now and again it'd get stronger. And he'd lost a lot of weight, and even his fingers were skinny. And it looked like E.T. beckoning me over. And he whispered to me, "We were a success." With and for each other for 29 years. We were a team, and we were a success. Many of you witnessed Ian's penchant for building things. Some of you have met David Moncrieff, his eldest son. And here today we have Ian's daughter, Angie, much loved and loving daughter. David lives in Canberra and visited frequently, and that's how many of you become to know him. And you may have recognised the similarities between him and his father. Anyway, David has something to say about the penchant for building things, and he talks about their childhood at home. "We didn't own a television until 1970. Mum and Dad preferred to listen to the wireless, not the radio, the wireless, and do other things in their evenings. Many nights after the dishes were done, Dad would say, 'I'm just going down to the garage,' the one he built, of course, after he made our house habitable, to resume work on his latest project. Like the Jack Holt designed Enterprise, his first sailing dinghy, the second of at least 12 boats he built. After he made a transistor radio, of course, he used to take that down to the garage or up to the shed to work away on his home-built circular saw, an instrument that was savage but utilitarian. A whirring blade powered by a scrounge electric motor, driving a fan belt that used to smoke if he jammed the blade. Measure twice and cut once was his workshop mantra. The other was the 3 fingers, 1 thumb grip. Bruce? Where is he? Bruce Rossini. Show us, Bruce.
I don't know, what do we do?
3 thumbs, 3 fingers, one thumb. The other was the 3 fingers, 1 thumb grip that enabled a good grip on tools like planes and screwdrivers. Despite the injury potential, he and we didn't lose any fingers to that circular saw, and later iterations, a Triton workmate and a flash unit from Carbotech that enabled him to make some excellent furniture for Riverbank Circuit. And even in his last decade, some of that furniture and LED lighting he exhibited in a Ripples exhibition. Very old people are often the last of their generation to live in their family or in their friendship groups. Ian was that, and it's sad. It's a lonely place to be. But in his mid-80s, Ian and I built at Lochiel Park. He designed our house because he was actually he trained as a young man when he came back from the war as a draftsman, and then he taught at the Institute of Technology in mechanical drafting to put his children through school. Not only were houses being built at Lochiel Park, but community as well. He valued so highly the opportunity to make new friends and neighbours with whom he had things in common. Woodwork is the obvious one, but gardening and being useful, that was always very important to him, and it was one of the sadnesses when his fingers became less dexterous and he couldn't be useful as much. He was useful to me, I told him. You're very useful. You just have to keep loving me so that I can love you and so you can be cared for. It's a string thing. And books and reading, politics and discussions, storytelling, As for many of us, living in this community was a happy place for Ian. Ian's family and I really wanted to keep him with us at home, if at all possible. And thanks to wonderful support because of his veteran status, and in no small part because of the generosity of our friends and neighbours, we were able to do that. Especially in the last year, and then increasingly ever more so in the last few months. People have been ever generous in all sorts of ways. And I confirmed this morning that I now know the identity of the fairy who took the bins out and brought them in. People came in just to chat, to hang over the back gate and say, "How are you, Ian?" Or to come in and accept a cup of tea and engage him in conversation. It was very important to him. Sometimes he had your company whilst I went out, and you would, one or two of you would come in and sit with him. But those conversations that took part were his connection to the outside world, so that his life didn't just become number 14 Riverbank Circuit, but rather connection with the people that mattered to him. And then, of course, the support for me, so that I could keep going. Some of you fed me, weeks at a time you fed me. You took Dolly for a walk every day. There was shopping done. Ian's workshop was moved so that his workshop could become his bedroom. So in fact, where he lay in bed at home was exactly where his workshop bench was. Yeah. I was forgiven by the committees, on the committees that I was serving, for my being so distracted in my absences and my not pulling my weight. And importantly to me, my pet projects, which you probably know, the big sort of king on the grassland and a few plants. There was somebody's who kept those going, and they've been flourishing without me, which is fantastic. So the challenge for me, well, I talked it over with Ian just a couple of days ago, and I said to him that the biggest challenge for me now is to make a new life without him. But I'm going to get on that bike again. I've been on it already, under tutelage and care. Small rides. But I'm going to cycle that bike into the future. But he'll never be without me. In my heart, in my head. We always talked a lot. We're both great talkers. We'll continue. Thank you so much for coming today and making this a special occasion. He was a lovely man, as you know. And Angie has a book that she'd like you to write, certainly your name, so that we know that you've been here today. But maybe you'd like to write a little something else, a story and take as long as you like. It'll just go around the room. And we'll leave it on the table there.
Just leave the front few pages, please.
I think that's all I've got to say, Christine. Is that all right?
I'd drink 3 for his one, but he'd sit on one for all night. Or I could talk about when he helped Bruce to construct those cupboards over there. Or I could talk about when he come along with a box of steel that he'd cut perfectly and wanted it welded up because he couldn't weld because he had a pacemaker. So it would just fit together perfectly. I remember making a stand, or he made a stand for his air conditioner and it was just so precisely cut out, and he had it all clamped together, so all I had to do was put a weld on there. And then that particular day was just after he bought his red Mazda MX-5, and he said,
It's
Dave,
for sale, by the way.
it's for sale. How much? And he said, come and have a look at my new car, come and look at my new car. And he showed me how the top came down. He said, get in and we'll take you for a drive. He said, you wouldn't believe how fast this goes around. And demonstrated. So, you know, Ian was a very special person. And I know about Bridgestones and the whole organisation that happened out at Salisbury that he was part of in his last paid work, his sailing, in building boats when he's in his 90s, and putting them into the lake, which is up there, and falling out, and you know, what a character, what a lovely man, very special. Someone else's turn.
Some of my enduring memories of Ian was when we, as part of the Drainworks project, we used to assemble the mosaics in people's sheds and all over the place, and then we would put them on frames and carry them to the site and install them. The one that Dave designed, the one on where the green flagpole is, what's the name of that, Dave? Anyway,
Growing together.
yeah, that was a 6 metre long mosaic, which was twice the normal length, and so we organised frames and things to do it, and about 15 people to carry it. Among them was Ian, and he was right at the front, and Di was there also, and she was concerned he was overexerting himself, so she wanted him to be swapped out halfway, because we had a couple others like myself that were just meandering along and behind. Anyway, when we tried to get Ian to swap out, he wouldn't. He was insistent that he was fit enough and well enough and strong enough to maintain the rhythm. So that's what he did, and good on him. He did have a bit of pushback, as Di would know. That was one occasion.
Had plenty of that.
Absolutely. And I worked with him here, and he made the drawer fronts for all those cabinets there to precision levels, and he fronted up when we were doing the top on that cupboard. We had to join 2 pieces of form ply. So Ian said, yep, I've got everything we need to do that, and he got some marine epoxy, and we epoxied together. So the other day I said, well, maybe we should put a little sign above that joint and call it Monker's Gap as a piece of memory of Ian. I just off the top, there many things happened. We saw him go from a fit and young 95-year-old, at least 95, maybe even 97, and like Di and all of us, we could see that he was struggling. And it was only the week before he passed that I spoke to Di, and I said, I've been walking my daily walk. I thought, wow, Ian's 1 month into his 100th year. And that was obviously just recently, and I thought then maybe he can make the 3-digit target, but unfortunately he didn't. And Di and I had probably a 15-minute discussion that day, and it was a really, really nice. I hope it was uplifting for Di, and it was good just to talk about how he was going and what he was doing. So they're my memories of Ian, and I'll cherish them forever.
Lovely. And I don't know many of you at all, so I'll introduce myself. I was very blessed, lucky, some time ago that I borrowed some specialist recording equipment from the State Library and sat down and talked to Ian 4 times, I think, about an hour and a half each time. We recorded that about his wartime experiences and his thoughts about the war, thoughts about the Japanese, and his life and his sailing, all that sort of stuff. So then we got that transcribed with some artificial intelligence and a lot of input and correcting from me. So the State Library now has interviews permanently recorded with Ian, about his wartime experiences, and also accompanying that, there's the transcript and sort of surgical keywords and a whole lot of... So it becomes history, not forgotten, becomes history, remembered, and there forever for somebody or other who sees their own special value in that and gets what they can from it. So that was great. A couple of things that stood out from that, and this, just thinking about Ginny, we have other friends, sadly passed now, who survived the intensity of the Second World War. And one of the comments that they always made was that they were lucky. And Ian said that too, he was lucky to have survived that. The other thing that I remember so intensely from those interviews is the time Ian was a funny man. And we would be talking about all sorts of things. We'd be talking about stuff. We were just giggling like schoolgirls, having a great time. And it was lovely to hear his voice again. But I'm glad that history resource exists.
That's fabulous.
You meet truly, truly good people and you treasure them. That's what Di did, of course. And I think this community did as well. I think for us, as a community, we actually looked to Ian as our own inspiration, our own person who made us think, well, if Ian can do it, anybody can. And he was just always such a lovely, lovely person to everybody who ever came into contact with him. And he was a lucky man, I think, but at the same time, he had a general love of people, community, and doing things that made him somebody out of the box, somebody who was just that bit different, that bit special. And I think we all loved him for that, and that's why he's got this wonderful crowd here today to say farewell, Ian, because whilst he is gone, his memory will live on, certainly, because it is everywhere, because he contributed so much to this community. And it is a difficult journey after you lose somebody, and Di will certainly know about that, and it's unfortunate because Di is also a lovely, lovely person who Ian chose to be his partner, and he did not want to leave her, and you can understand that. And he will be there in talking to you, Di, and you'll hear his voice, but you will not have the pleasure of his company again, unfortunately, as none of us will. But we can honour his memory in the way that we do things, and perhaps we could do something here to honour his memory in a more permanent kind of way. So there's a challenge for us, for those community leaders who do have ideas and so on. So I'm going to make that suggestion here today, that we could perhaps find a place where we could honour Ian and just the things that he has done for this community, because this community didn't just arise out of nowhere. It took a lot of people working very hard over a long time, and Ian was there. So I want to say thank you to Ian for all he's done, and thank you to Di, and I hope you can have the good life that you deserve and that Ian wanted you to have.
Attempts to get him to eat, even jokingly telling him that I would be in trouble if his dinner wasn't eaten. He fell asleep, and I had nothing to do. And this body doesn't like having nothing to do. As I looked at him sleeping there, I started to realise that he didn't have much longer with us. I thought about it being autumn and the leaves falling off the trees. So here is Autumn Man, an ode to Ian. You've lived the autumn of your life as if it were the spring, sailed and travelled the whole wide world, done almost anything. With your young bride by your side, and Annette just out there, you've been cared for better than anyone I've known far or near. You've built boats and sailed them in the rain and in the sun, raced them and pushed them, or sailed just for fun. You've kept and maintained them, you know just how, to be sure they will serve you when a wave hits the bow. And if that's not enough, you've both helped to build an eco-community where dreams are fulfilled. You've gardened and built, mosaicked and more in the times of the year when you've been ashore. You had skills aplenty to offer around, and no shortage of work for you could be found. You've inspired so many with tales to tell since early last century. You told them so well. Right to the end, in the hospital there, you still had a smile and a joke to share. But it wasn't to last. Your body was tired. After a life of adventures, it finally expired. So now we say farewell to such a dear friend. We were lucky to know you right up to the end. Our lives are much richer from having you near, and we'll certainly miss you now you're not here. It is winter now. The clouds are rolling in. Our autumn man is not here. Goodbye, Ian. We're going to miss you.